session today, and we'll put it up on both uh, the site for semester one for the supplementary students and on semester two site, of course, for other students. I know that not all of the announcements are going through, but just go to the site. Please utilize it as much as possible so that, if there is anything that is coming up, see that. And Professor Herter is going to start presentation. Professor Herter.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you did. Hopefully this will be informative and helpful for your preparation for the exam. We just wanted to say thank you for your, you could move to that slide. Thanks, Mr. Gong. Thank you for submitting your assignments. We've been marking quite a bit the past few weeks, and we must say that the standard is quite, something I wouldn't say surprising, but something that is really heartening. We received wonderful assignments and wonderful answers, but we would still just like to provide you with some feedback on assignment 1 and 2. We are not allowed to post the memorandums for those. We will be releasing the assignments 1 this afternoon, well, results this afternoon, and we will hopefully be releasing the assignment 2 results by the weekend at some stage. It takes quite a while to mark all of these with attention and care. Assignment 1, most students did very well, and it's very noticeable if you mark a lot of these assignments where the differences lie in terms of how much attention students paid to their answers or how much time they spent in actually doing this. So it's the general thing of the more attention you pay, the harder you work, the better you prepare, the better your answer will be. But in general, we are satisfied with the answers. But there are still fundamental problems with the answers, and we would like you to take note of this for purposes of the exam, because in our tutorial letter 101 and in our exam instructions, we provided clear guidelines, and some students, and I know I'm preaching to the converted because you are here, so you care. So you spent a lot of time on this module. But for others, maybe listening to this recording a little bit later, and for you to consider going into the exam, it is very important that you still do it on your own. Students may collaborate. There's not a problem in doing that, but it still needs to be your own. And we still find a lot of students doing strange things, quoting strange sources from strange places, and not the sources that we prescribed. So please reference the cases and the articles that we prescribe, because this is important in terms of the module we want to teach you. This is the essence of what we want to teach you. So there's nothing wrong with including other sources. That's wonderful. If you do some of your own research and you include that in your answers, that's a wonderful thing to do. So please continue doing that. But if you only include strange references to strange resources, we know about most of them. I can assure you about that. But if you don't reference any of the cases or the articles or the sources other sources that we prescribed, then it starts looking strange. So please just include some of the references, cases, and articles that we prescribed as the benchmark for this module. And it's preferable that you stay away from internet resources, because if you just Google a certain few keywords, that's not research, that's not writing, that's not what is required to pass this module. And let me start off by saying that we have been very lenient, Mr. Gama and myself, with the marking in both the first and the second assignment, because we wanted to give you an opportunity to prove yourselves. And also, we don't want to create any difficulties for you, but in the same sense, in order to pass this module and your degree and become lawyers, if that is what you want to do, we also do not expect you to just use templates or within a group of students use answers and switch them around and change wording here and there. Please note that we have been doing this for a long time. And we have noticed this in both the assignments, and those that have made themselves guilty of this practice may regard themselves as being quite fortunate, because we have noted it and we decided to not make an issue of it for the assignments, but we can promise you that try this again in the exam, like many of our students for this module in this semester have tried. We will definitely either give you 0 for 0% for the exam, and in serious cases, we will definitely report you for disciplinary actions, which is quite serious. The sanctions associated with those practices are quite severe, because the university takes these practices quite seriously. So please stay away from using templates, just switching around answers and trying with wordplay to confuse us. It's not going to work. We are going to notice that. We also use Turnitin. That helps us, although It's only something that sort of guides us. So please be careful. It's a very stern warning. Please do not use templates. Please do not use previous answers or simply copy from resources that you think were not prescribed and therefore we will not notice, because I can promise you we will. So this is a very stern warning. This is the most important part of this lecture, not lecture, but this information session is, please do your own work and do it the best you can. If you use someone else's work, it's gonna have a huge impact on your academic career or your professional career. Thanks, Rafael. And then the other thing, well, we noticed many things, but one of the important things we noticed, and this is very important, is that students still do not read the question properly. So many students start answering the question, maybe because they use templates, or maybe they're just running out of time, or do not care enough to actually answer the question they are asked. So always please just read the question carefully, because we get many answers that do not have any relation to the question that was actually asked. And read the question until the end, think about it for a while, read it again. Read it twice or 3 times. So always read the question carefully so that you know what you're busy with. If you don't know what you're busy doing, then it's irrelevant of what you're putting on paper. Then you're just wasting your own time and hours. So please read the question carefully. For example, a lot of students only answered 1 or 2 parts of the question. So it's important to decide, if you don't want to answer a part of a question, just properly answer 1 or 2 parts of the question, but number your questions properly so that we can see, okay, we don't necessarily want to answer this part of the question. And that's another thing you please need to be aware of, is that it's very difficult for us to mark properly if you don't construct your examination question paper or your assignment properly. Because we get a lot of assignments that the one question flows into the other. So you don't know what you're busy marking, or in terms of the information provided and the marks that need to be awarded for whatever is in front of you. So please just pay a little attention and spend a few more minutes in answering the questions in a structured way by numbering them properly so that we know what we are busy doing. In assignment 2, we had a bit of an issue with students not linking the Electronic Communications Act to some of the questions that were asked. So again, it gets to understanding what you need to answer before you answer it, and then thinking carefully about it, and then applying your knowledge that you hopefully gain by reading your resources. And the exam will be the same, but we will definitely be a little bit stricter on the exam because that is the final decision whether you pass this module or not. So please look at the question asked and answer that question. So please be specific in your answers and take note of what you put on the paper, because we will surely be taking note of that, and that will be the measure we use to award you marks. Next, thanks, Rafia. Next slide, please.
This is going to be me now.
Oh, okay.
Um, if I may just add a few things, and I think this is quite important. It is incredibly important for students to realize with the assignment, as with this exam for this subject, you have been given a certain amount of time to work through the question paper. You have a week. And therefore, what we will be expecting, our expectations of you are very well written, well researched, well referenced papers. All of the prescribed materials that is given to you, which is available on our site, we are fully online, is a curated list. So it's not everything that you will find out there, but it is the most important things from our perspective in this area. In terms of utilizing other internet sources, you will see this is e-commerce is something that is a current interesting part of the law everywhere in the world. And you may not always figure out whether the person who's writing is firstly in South Africa. Secondly, that they may or may not, whatever you find online outside of peer-reviewed articles and cases, you will they're not peer reviewed, so they're not challenged, they're not looked at carefully. There's all of those things matter, because then these are just opinions of someone. So please be wary of what's out there. So again, as I said, the examination paper is written over a period of a week. You're given a week. I will say this, and this is just from the kind of assignments we got, especially the precision in terms of referencing that happened. We expect really good referencing. That means you already need to study for the exam. You need to know what parts of which legislation covers which part of this. So you have sometimes Consumer Protection Act will come in. Sometimes you have the ECTA come in. Sometimes you have POPIA come in. So each one of these covers a different area of e-commerce. Have a really good understanding of these things before the exam. I know it is a week and it feels like a long time compared to other subjects, but you will find that firstly, the time runs fairly quickly. Secondly, that you won't have the time to start and do research. You need to at least know what you're looking for already as soon as you see the question before you. So you need to have studied to precise research. So please keep that in mind. And of course, as Professor Hurt has already said, we are going to be quite strict, especially with the use of templates. We did see papers that more or less look, the similar answers, similar mistakes, and you may think, oh, there are two lecturers marking. How are they ever going to pick it up? Believe me, we pick it up. Between us, we have enough experience to do that. The paper is a paper out of 100 marks. Of course, the weight is 49% of your marks comes out of assignment, which is why it's important to do the assignments. and 51% of the mark is from the exam, and of course, that makes up your 100% of your full mark. It is open book, of course. It will be uploaded on the module site. So this subject, because we are giving it's off the timetable, for those students who are writing the exam for the first time, this will be the third assignment for you on the My Module site, not the exam site, but the My Module site, assignment number 3. For those who are writing the supplementary, this will be assignment number 4 for on your module site. So the site for last term. So just keep this very clear in your head. You are not going to the My Exam site. This will all be done on your My Module site. Study all your prescribed reading, refer to the tutorial letter, and of course the feedback that we've now given. So with regard to your exam paper, the assignments were a good indication of the type of questions you will get, and that is why we give you those assignments so you can practice at writing the way you need to for your exam. Sorry, I'm just going between these so I can admit people. There are 4 questions. So 3 of these will have a scenario. So we've given you a factual situation and then questions on that. And there is an essay question as well. So note that it is, of course, the essay question is divided as well. But 3 of them are particularly scenario based. So what are your resources? What are the things that you have to look at? Prescribed reading material, the cases, the legislation, the journal articles, the extracts of books. In your case, it is fairly easy. You do not even have to go to the library site. All you have to do is go to the My Module site. You'll see the folders are there with all of these things in the tutorial letter 1 or 2, and so forth. So there's nothing surprising or new. We expect you to have footnotes. Please, you have a whole week. So when you write, we will expect that it will be a very well written answer, properly referenced. So we're talking footnotes, we're talking bibliography. You have to have these. So for every statement that you extract for any other sources, you have to footnote it. And as we've talked about before, the first level of referencing has to come from your prescribed sources. Thereafter, you can maybe do some extra research if you find the time to do it. And if you do, we are impressed by it. And I usually, myself and Professor Herter will usually go and look it up and then share this and go, oh, this is an interesting thing. As long as it actually deals with what you are asked to do. Please do not have an answer in your head and try and, having worked out an answer or something for some sorts, find a question that sort of talks about the same thing and try and retrofit it. Don't do that, please. You'll see you have to have the declaration form. You have to submit it with the examination script. It is very important. And this is a UNISA requirement. You have to submit it. And if it's not, then you're penalized. The length of your script, we've asked for 10 pages. And because it is a week, we expect typed papers. Read very carefully. And we've given you the font style. Please, Arial, size 11. Anything smaller than that is incredibly difficult to mark. 1.5 line spacing. Please use the same font style as in the text, and of course the size is slightly smaller and you will have single spacing. These are all provided to you in the style guideline in the 301. I'm just merely repeating them here. And we do not have to ask you to have to show us, or to reference in every single question. I'm telling you now, you will have to. We are not going to ask specifically if there's an authority for your opinion. You will always have to provide it. Keep this in mind. Submissions go automatically through Turnitin. It's not something that we control. It goes through it automatically. You don't get an opportunity to view the report. We have, as I've said, no control over this. It is merely a tool. And that is to see three things. Have you copied from your study guide or another source? For example, any number of online notes, and believe me, Turnitin finds them, or another student. There is no such thing as a minimum or acceptable or a correct percentage. Yes, we have been trained to interpret them, and there might be, sometimes, for example, if we ask you a specific thing and all of the students reference, because you have to, section 1 of, let's say, the Papaya Act. Yeah, Poppy Act. All of the students will show up. It'll show up with saying, hang on, they all reference this. As lecturers, we go, well, this was specifically asked, so this similarity is okay. So again, it is a useful tool for us to use for interpretation. However, if we ask for something and you're writing a conclusion, and let's say 3 or 4 students have word to word the same conclusion, and it is found on an online resource, then perhaps there's an issue. Okay. So if you and the students use the same notes to copy from, you copied word from your study guide, you copied word for word from the internet. Why is this so important? Because we want to see how you specifically, individually understand and have engaged with the work. We want to see your understanding. You are going to be going out there into the world and giving people advice. There'll be no reliance on something else. You will have to do that. So we are trying to train you to have that reasoning skill, and we want to see it in your work. And the only occasion we have are the assignments and the exam. So this is the thing. It is important also to let you guys know how to do this, because of course, that control find and control replace thing is, I think, possibly the worst thing any one student can use. So how do you put something in your own words when, this is an open book exam and so forth? Professor Sonil Khair, who's one of our colleagues, has thought deeply about this. And we use her sort of steps in this because I think she put them down incredibly well. Firstly, you have to have read the source. Read the case for yourselves. Read the article. Once you've read it, sit. Right, there we go. Once you've read it, summarize it in your own words for your own understanding. And then compare what you have written against the original source. Say, well, hang on, this is what I said it is what happened here, or what the author is trying to say in the article. And then go and look at what the author themselves wrote. Is this what you have written an exact copy of what the author wrote, or did you write what they had to deal with in your own words? And of course, every time you are using somebody else's authority, whether it's an article that you're referencing, a piece of legislation, a case, put them down in your footnotes and in your bibliography. Add the citation. So we are not saying you're trying to pass off this idea, this conclusion, whatever it is, as your own. So this is just, for example, the kind of things that we give to you guys to read. Yeah. So this is a passage. How do you put this into your own words? This is one of the, I think, initial ones where especially when we ask you, how did I think it was an assignment 1, where we talked to you about e-commerce and the issues around it. have a read, and then as you can see, what we've tried to do is to try and do the experiment on your behalf and take those words and then put. Firstly, you'll see it generally ends up being a little bit shorter because, of course, the author has, spent a lot of time in there. They're referencing a lot of sort of detail that may or may not be what you need. Sorry again. Here's another student. Um, the idea is still there. We are talking about the increased opportunity in Africa. So we are still saying business opportunities are increasing, but we are still saying the same thing. There are two key concerns. There are two concerns that are set out in this article: the need for a legal framework, as well as So just remember that that either way, you are still conveying the main concepts in that article. Of course, remember there is a page limit on your what you will be writing for the exam. You won't be able to write exactly as that. You just have to take out the main ideas and tell us what they're saying. What are the issues? What are the concerns? Yeah. Um, for example, this one. Example 2. So in this one, the person is writing different ethnic groups, cultures. You can just say there's diversity. They came up with this thing in 1999. That's it. This is about bringing the continent to developmental goals to take its place globally. Again, you're just taking those main ideas out. And I'm going to now hand back to Professor Herter, who's going to take you through how to attempt different types of questions.
Good afternoon, all
Yeah,
of those.
this will be relatively brief. You're not going to give you the exact answers, just to let you guys
Yes,
know.
no, this will not be. It's more or less what I said earlier. Please read the question when you start to answer it, because it's important for you to focus on the answer, not to focus on the resource, because the resources and your knowledge could be quite substantial, but it's not necessarily what you need to provide us in answering the question. So this is just an example of what you would expect to get in the exam. You'll see, and be guided by the marks as well. You'll see that most of these questions are 5-mark questions. So the more information you provide, obviously the better, as long as it's accurate. But you will notice that certain keywords in these questions. For example, identify and briefly. So if you have that in mind, your answer will immediately be more focused on what we want you to provide us with. So don't read it once and briefly and just blurt out on paper in 2 pages what you think it is that you just read, or how you.
Okay, let's do the first one to 10 then.
Oh, yes, please. I've muted everyone again. Go ahead. Professor Herter, you can go ahead. I've muted all the attendees. Oh dear. Oh. We seem to have.
My apologies, sorry, my apologies. I think I lost the connection there for a second.
Not a problem.
Yes, this is an example question, so we're not going to discuss these answers. This is just an example. But please be guided, firstly, by the question. As I've mentioned earlier, read the question properly, read it a few times, make it your own, and then start preparing your answer. Don't just dive in and put everything on paper that you think you know about what you've read or what you've studied in context of the question the specific question that we pose to you. You'll also notice certain key words in these questions. For example, briefly, identify. So please stick to those, because otherwise you sort of lose the track of what we want you to tell us in terms of the knowledge you have gained within this module. So, for example, the highlighted part there, 2 challenges. We see that in the assignments often and in previous exams often. We asked for 2 challenges and we get 12 challenges. And it's impossible to mark a question like that and be fair if the question is not answered in the correct manner. So this is an example.
If I may just come in,
Sure.
The other thing I think, and this is very important, you'll see question 1.3 specifically says, identify and briefly discuss the challenges you have identified in 1.2. So you cannot come up with new ones now. You have to look at the ones that you identified and discuss from those to, what it is that, those 2 challenges, now you have to discuss them in greater detail. And here again, 1.4. So they're in linkages in between the subsections, and please read them as such. I think that was part of, some of the issues that we saw happening as well. Sorry, I'm going to move on for you.
Thank you. Yes, you are final year module students, so at this stage you should have a rather accomplished idea of how to answer an assignment or an exam. But it is still important, well, we feel that it's important for us to just elaborate on this again, just to remind you of how to answer an exam question. Even though it's just maybe 1 or 2 sentences, there are a lot of information contained in those questions. And those questions encompass a lot of what you needed to study. I mean, if you just consider, if we use the term integral model law, for example, if you've had a look at the integral model law, it's a rather comprehensive, expansive document with a lot of details. So it's not something to just take lightly. You need to just have an appreciation of at least the parts of it that we expect you to be aware of within this module. So really think about your question before you start to compile your answer. And another thing we noticed with the assignments is that we tend to get a lot of information that is absolutely irrelevant. It is good to see that you've learned within the module of certain principles and approaches and legislation, but the point is you still need to answer a specific question. So there are sometimes a number of pages we don't even mark within an assignment or an exam because it's not relevant. Even though it's true, it's not relevant. So plan your answer, plan your structure, then start writing, and then you will get the desired results because you actually paid attention to what you were asked to do. And that is the most important thing. So you'll see here in the example we used, it's very specific. It's very contracted in the way that you need to compile your answer. So just waffling about and including a lot of stuff you've learned is not the way to go about it. Read the answer, plan your structure, start writing, revise, think about it again. You have a week to do it, as Mr. Goma has mentioned. It's enough time for you to properly do this exam that we are going to start with next week. So my advice is read the question properly, structure it, think about it, write it the best you can using the resources we prescribed. Include other resources if you have the time. Revise it again and then submit. The next slide, please, Mr. Goma. Yes, and then the case discussions. This is the recipe for a case discussion in legal terms. Those of you who become lawyers will need to use this recipe. You start with the facts, then the decision and the reasons. That's called, well, in Old Latin, which is part of our legal system because we have a common law system, the ratio decidendi. And then the most important thing is the criticism that might have been mentioned about the case or the decision. About, yes, the decision that was reached by academic writers, by other judges, maybe an appeal court decision. There are always different ways, and that's what makes the law interesting, is that there are always different perspectives. And we also like that, just to mention that as an aside, we like different perspectives. Everything doesn't have to be precise in terms of the interpretation. If you have your own opinion, please air it and please mention it to us. It's always interesting, and we also learning with reading your insights. But there are always different ways to interpret the law. So keep that in mind if you get a question regarding a case discussion, how to critically evaluate that. It's always good to hear new opinions. Just make sure it's your own opinion. Thank you, Raphael. Yes, these are two examples of the cases we prescribe. We just provide you there with where you can find the cases and their discussions. So always keep in, well, we've mentioned it many times now during the past 40 minutes or so, is that we prescribe these cases or the articles for certain specific reasons. And these are the fundamental cases. There are more recent cases, but these are the fundamental cases. In the principles regarding e-commerce, we would like to teach you. So
I mean, this is actually a wonderful way of approaching sort of cases, and read them, know which area under which they fall, reference anything else that is linked to that. And so then you will already have a really good understanding of the area. And these are not new cases, but they are the, the most important cases that even the newer cases reference, which is why we, of course, go back to these ones. So judges themselves see these as, setting down that rule, setting down the rules that they talk about.
Yes, no, for sure. That's why we prescribe these cases, for you to be aware of the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
If you start practicing maybe sometime soon, or you do postgraduate studies, there are many other cases that deal with the same issues, but the main goal of this module is to teach you the fundamentals. So that's why it's prescribed, and that's why we would like you to reference them when you are asked a certain question that deals with these issues. Okay, then it's basically, I think Mr. Gama and myself will do this sort of interlinking or together, but it's basically a reminder, just again, please prepare early enough. Don't leave it until the middle of the week. Even though you have a week, don't do that, please. It's going to catch up, and it's going to be difficult to catch up a semester's work with all the prescribed material. So please prepare early, so that you are comfortable in revising what you've written as well, and that you don't need to, because the later you try and submit your exam, and this is only for a small percentage of you that I'm speaking to now, the more the more you need to gather other resources, so to speak, to submit your exam, and that's where you get into trouble. So please start preparing early
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't need to call in help from outside, so to speak, to put it, yes, very informally. But you are going to get into trouble, so start preparing early. Don't start copy and pasting because we can immediately recognize that. I can assure you about that fact. We've been doing this for too long and we know the subject field too well.
Mm-hmm.
So please don't do that. We can immediately recognize that. And yes, as we say, they engage with the content and understand the work. This is what it's about. You are learning, you are studying, you are pursuing a career or many other goals. So please don't start copying or pasting and plagiarizing. And there are many terms describing what you are not supposed to be doing in engaging. If you just doing a module to complete your degree and you think you're going to have a career in doing so, it's not
Mr. Pule?
it's not
Yes,
the
sir.
best. It's not.
Box.
Sorry, could you unmute yourself, Professor Herter? It's just every time I mute any incoming person, I think I mute you as well.
Oh,
By
okay,
mistake.
sorry. Sorry, I've been speaking to myself for a few minutes now. No worries. So please avoid all of these actions. Do not copy and paste. Do not plagiarize. Do not reference sources you have not read.
And if I may just especially come in with sources you have not read. So if you have not read the case fully, be very careful, because if you are just reading the summary of the case that is found usually at the start of the case, those are not accurate always. So please be very careful. Do not just read the journal abstract and think you've read it. Read the actual thing prescribed to you. We haven't given you the full number of resources we might think that you should have. We understand that the semester is short and so forth, so we've given you the essential sources to look at, and so please engage with them. Okay. Yes. If I may come in here, you know
Yes,
if
sure.
you prepare beforehand, you will be less stressed. It's as simple as that. If you want the levels of stress to go down, attempt your attempt answering those questions as quick as early as possible. Do not leave them for the last 2 days. We do know that there are issues around ESCOM and connectivity and so forth. You don't want to have an issue uploading it, and then there are other issues in place. UNISA, as UNISA, we can't control what happens with the load shedding, with connectivity, and you have to manage that. You do have, of course, a full week, but if you leave it to the end, then those issues will affect you. The best thing to do is to try get going as soon as you get it. Then uh, the stress levels will go down, I promise. And of course, have all of your study material handy. Okay, so it will be available to you on the module site. So the module site, for those who are writing, who are second semester students, it will be assignment 3 at 8 a.m. and it will be 8 a.m. on the module site for supplementary students on last semester's module site. at exactly the same time. So it will be opening up at exactly the same time. I will say this, I know as soon as it's 8 o'clock, I will have a student email me saying that it is not available. It's an automatic system. We upload the exam and it automatically opens up. It might be 1 or 2 minutes late, which is what happened last term. And there were students very upset and worried and stressed. We are firstly, both myself and Professor Herter will be awake and busy at that time with our computers will be on. We'll be checking the sites as well. So we are aware of all of and if there's any issue, we will be aware of it. And it just might be, it'll happen at 8:01 and not at exactly 8. It is an automatic system. We cannot control it. It's something that tech people do. So really, please do not stress about that. Remember, you do have a week. And I think you've got our emails that are given to you. Please contact us if you have. And I will say this, a specific question about a specific area of the law substantively, or if you have perhaps a query about, how the exam mark, we've already told these 4951, but let's say you have a question about that. Engage. We will ask you, firstly, to use only your My Life emails. We can only answer you if you've used those. Secondly, we will ask you whether you've gone and engaged with the resources. So you need to first have studied before you come to us. Yes? Thank you. And I'm going to just stop sharing this. And then if you have a few minutes still that we can, if you have any questions, you have now the time to ask any. Raise your hands. I'm sure everyone is very used to this system. Raise your hand and I will go get to you. You just go to the reactions, and if you click on the little button that says reaction, one of those is the first one there is raise hand. Just to let you guys know, it will be here, this bit here, you just raise your hand. Yeah, go to reactions. Questions? We can't hear you very well. Miss Sakela, are you speaking to us or to someone else?
Sorry, it's just the noise in the background.
Oh, sorry. I just heard a lady's voice, so I assumed it was a man. So apologies, Mr. Sakela. Any questions? I hope we have put your minds to rest, but between myself and Professor Herter.
That's pretty clear from my side, so thank you very much. I don't have any questions.
Yeah, Professor Herter, I don't see any questions, and I think we can then bring this to a close. I would like to just say, please engage with your study materials, stay away from copy and paste, and we really want to see what you think of the work, because that tells us that we've made inroads and gotten you to understand the work. And I would just like to say good luck, Professor Herter.
Yes, I would just like to say the same, more or less. All the best with your exams. Thank you for your assignments. We were pleasantly surprised with the quality of the assignments we received. And please keep it up. but be careful with all the warnings we've given you. But all the best. We wish you the best of luck and all the success that we anticipate that you will bring us in terms of the exam. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to the class. Much appreciated. Good luck for this exam as well as all of your exams. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.